Welcome back to Rome Boys. On this episode, we welcome to the upper room Father Mitch Pacwa.
Bienvenido.
Howdy. Nevin.
I'd say welcome to Texas, but you're already too comfortable here.
Yeah.
Well, we've had the great pleasure of spending a couple of days with you, Father, hunting on my cousin's ranch out south of here in Eden. You got yourself a red stag.
That's my first one, and it's one of the few I've ever actually seen. You don't see too many red stag, except in hunting videos from New Zealand, where they're
Right.
enormous.
Yeah.
But they're a beautiful critter and tasty. But this was a cull buck. For those who don't hunt, you cull out certain bucks that aren't going to give a good genetics to the females that they breed, and so that's what I was doing. It was kind of a help to the herd to make it stronger and healthier.
Yeah, you're doing my cousin a favor, so I'm sure he appreciates that.
Well,
more ways than one.
he did me a favor because it was also just a lot of fun to be out there.
It was.
Looking for the right one, because you don't just see something and shoot. You know,
Yeah.
you
Sure.
don't see you never just see a bush shaking and then shoot. You know?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
You
Could
might-
be one of my kids or
Yeah.
You know, a pet.
or more importantly, one of the cattle.
Hey,
Yeah,
very true.
Do that one, yeah, for sure.
See, that's why
Keeping it real.
He's in Texas. You get it.
It was a blessing to have Mass with you as well. So yes, it was.
Yeah. Well, it was. When I go out to hunt, I always bring my mass kit. My superiors knew that I needed a carb. That my last vehicle had a cracked engine block, and so that's not good.
Yeah.
No, you don't get very far with that. No.
Nope. So wanted to get me a little Corolla, and I said to him, "That's useless to me.
Yes.
I can barely get a dead pig in there, yet alone a deer. I need a truck."
You saw me
But-
drive up in my Corolla and barely made it. So.
Yeah, that's it. And so, having a truck, I also bring not only what I need to hunt with, but also my Mass kit. And always everywhere I go, we celebrate Mass, and that's to me daily Mass is just essential.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah, it was awesome being
Yes.
in the audience of 3 people in the Mass and looking out over your shoulder, and I see zebra and
wildebeest.
wildebeest.
Where are we?
Yeah, that was great. This is West Texas?
yeah.
No.
Horned
Well,
oryx scimitar.
Well, this is another thing that a lot of folks don't understand about hunters. Red stag were in pretty high danger. We're in their home turf of Europe.
Right.
And then there are a lot of other critters that are also endangered. They had scimitar oryx.
Yes.
Very ancient animal. As a matter of fact, when you look at the hunting camps of Neanderthals, they were hunting oryx.
Oh, yeah.
Way back, 300,000 years ago.
Wow.
Because Neanderthals predate Homo sapiens. They're not our
Lineage.
They're not our lineage. They're not. They're a different group. But they.
Well, they were going extinct in their native countries
Yeah.
until they came to Texas, and now they're thriving.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There were a few Arabian oryx that got into Israel, and they sent them over to the United States, and now they're flourishing.
Yes.
They're almost all gone.
Oryx, not orcs from Lord of the Rings.
It looks like meat's back on our menu, boys.
No way.
God.
And
Oryx.
no, not orcs, and not Orec vacuum cleaners. These are different. They're tastier than your vacuum cleaners.
That's true.
If it's anything like what gets into mine. So this is,
I appreciate you saying that. I mean,
but it's true with all these beasts. And zoos have breeding programs, but when they have too many and other zoos don't need them, they just put them to sleep.
yeah.
Oh my.
Now they're selling them to ranchers and increasing the herds of these different critters that are at risk. And in fact, Texas A&M, God bless them, because they have a great veterinary school and also a program for not only farm animals but for wild animals.
Exotics. For
Yeah,
exotics.
well, exotics and native. They just take care of all the all the
Absolutely.
wild animals, and
Leading vet school.
they keep a record of what is endangered, how endangered, and this helps the ranchers who raise these exotics to know what to increase, what not to kill. Some of them you can't shoot
Right.
until the herd gets back, and then the hunting is what finances care for these exotics.
Yes.
You don't charge admission to a ranch.
Yeah.
Right.
Yet.
Not yet. No.
They haven't been federalized yet. And so,
Well-
but it's the hunting that finances the feeding and care and the breeding programs for these different critters. A lot of folks have no clue about that. But in countries where they are not allowed to be hunted, they're extinct.
Yes.
And where they're allowed to be hunted, there is this motive, namely hunting, to maintain the herd and keep diversity going.
This is kind of a paradigm because if there's a value on that animal, even a monetary one, they're more coveted and cared for, and that's kind of a paradigm because
Yes.
a lot of people don't understand that concept. They think, oh, you're making money on these animals. Well, it's preserving their entire existence. And I think maybe some people who look at the hunting world and the idea of capitalistic ideology, and they're trying to mesh the two together. But I love it from your perspective, Father, because you're a Jesuit. And, it's the mission of the Jesuit is reconciliation to God through God, humanity, and the environment.
Right.
Is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. And, the core of it goes to St. Ignatius' opening of the spiritual exercises. The spiritual exercises are a 30-day retreat that St. Ignatius developed out of his own 2 years as a hermit. After his initial conversion, he had been wounded at the Battle of Pamplona. It was just 500 years ago in May of 2021. So it was in May of 1521 that he was wounded. Cannonball shot right between his legs, nicked him, and didn't. But had it hit his leg, would have taken it off. But it nicked him and broke the leg, and that recuperation time is when he experienced conversion. It took 2 years to recuperate.
Yeah.
The French enemies that had shot the cannonball so admired his courage that they carried him to the Loyola Castle
Wow.
in a litter. But unfortunately, it set before they could set it. The bones healed before they could set it properly with the doctor, and it had a bump in it. And if you remember, men used to wear these long hose, these long socks, and shorter trousers, that just went to their thigh, and so there was a bump. And Ignatius was something of a ladies' man.
Hello, ladies man? Yeah, you got the ladies man. Now, what's your query?
And he didn't think that bump was quite so attractive.
Okay.
And he was pretty vain by his own admission. He prided himself on having really neatly cut fingernails and stuff like that. Back when they were cutting fingernails with a sheep shear, with scissors. And so he really groomed himself and, was known as a ladies' man. Apparently, one of our historians said he even had a child, but wasn't quite married to the mother. So you know, there's
The Augustine kind of story there.
yes, and so during that recuperation, he had a really bad fever from the infection. He had the doctors go in and saw that piece of bone off. Remember, there's no anesthetic.
Right.
Oh,
And,
my.
you know, this is a wake. You know, maybe a good shot of brandy or something, but
Yeah.
that was it.
Yeah, tough guy.
Yeah, and it still didn't look quite right, but it got infected, of course,
Yeah.
because they didn't understand bacteria and germs.
Yes.
So he had a bad fever from that wound, and during the fever, Our Lady and Saint Peter appeared to him in his room, and it's that's when he started to have his conversion. Also, he asked his sister-in-law, because his brother was now lord of the manor. He was the 11th son, so you know he wasn't going to inherit anything
right.
other than what he won in war and stuff, and from the emperor. So he his sister-in-law. He asked for some books about chivalry and battles and fights and stuff. And they didn't. He said, "I don't have any of those, but I got a Life of the Saints and a Life of Christ."
Yes.
He wasn't interested for a long time. But he got
Nothing
so bored
Yeah.
that he started reading that, and that's when he also noticed that as I thought about fights and battles and strategy and pretty damsels who I would put in distress like I did the last one or whatever, he said, I enjoyed that, but then it left me flat. But then when I thought about the different saints and I thought about the life of Christ, I felt same joy, but it lasted. And it took him a number of months to notice that pattern. And then he said, this is where the real joy is, and this is pseudo.
Consolation, desolation, the
Yep.
kind of first stages of that. Yeah.
And so, and he had that conversion with the vision of Our Lady and of St. Peter. So when he did heal up, saddled up an old mule and rode over to make a pilgrimage at Montserrat, which is a shrine of Our Lady, one of the many black Madonnas in Europe.
Oh, yeah.
You know why they're black?
No.
You know what that is in the Bible?
Oh.
That's in your Bible.
Okay.
Because there's a line in the Song of Songs that says, I am black but beautiful.
Oh.
And so they apply the Song of Songs. Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, who was the originator of chivalry. He was also an old soldier. Not old, he was a young soldier actually, in his 20s. But as a soldier, he tried to combine being a soldier with Christian faith, and he was the one who came up with chivalry.
Wow.
The originator of that. And the chivalrous knight, because remember, in St. Bernard's day, they were just getting over being barbarians.
Right.
And they hadn't quite gotten over all of it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Still a little bit of it. So Ignatius saw the saints and Our Lady as members of the royal court of Christ and Christ as the king. And so he took that. So he went to Our Lady of Montserrat, where this image of the Black Madonna still is there.
Yeah.
And he left his sword there and his clothes. Exchanged his clothes with a beggar, like Francis. Again, he had read that, in the life of Francis, in that book of the Lives of the Saints. And he imitated that and became a hermit. There's one little story about bad discernment as he's going on his way over there. He came up on a Muslim, because remember, Spain had been ruled by Muslims for a good 700 years. And there were still a few around. And this Muslim was riding horses. He's on his mule. And the Muslim made an untoward comment about the Blessed Mother. And that was insulting.
Yeah.
And so Ignatius said, Lord, I'm going to give free rein to my mule. If the mule follows the path the Muslim took, I'll kill him tonight. If it doesn't, I'll go on to Montserrat. like Balaam's ass, his mule had good sense. Took him to Our Lady, and he realized years later that was not the way you discern God's will, leaving it up to a mule.
Live and learn.
That makes you the dumbass.
There's a story in the Quran. It's interesting. You talk about that because it's in English it's tie up your camel and leave the rest to God. Because a Muslim walked into a shop, and the guy said, "Hey, your camel's not tied up outside," and he's like, "Oh, God will take care of it," and yet he's like, "Oh no, tie up your camel, then leave the rest to God. You got to do your part, right?"
Yep. There you go.
Use your logic.
So
discernment.
That'd be an interesting way of evangelizing. What'd you say about my mama?
Well,
My donkey led me here. I'm going to kill you.
So after he had left his sword and clothes, gave his clothes to the beggar and left his sword after an all-night vigil, like knights do. That was one of the things that St. Bernard did. You go to a chapel of Our Lady, and you place your sword there in an all-night vigil. He made that all-night vigil, and then took up the livery of Christ instead of the livery of the human kings. If he took up the livery of the Emperor Charles V at that time, it would have been with the signs of royalty and of Castile and Aragon and all that stuff. But he took the livery of Christ, which is the clothes of a beggar. And he went over to this cave at Manresa, not too far away, asked a Dominican to be his spiritual director. And he went through lots of struggles. He had scrupulosity and a variety of other difficulties. But in that process, he, grew in holiness. And that was his experiences there, as he wrote them down, were the basis for writing down the spiritual exercises. And, he didn't write with, the eloquence of a well-educated man. He wrote basic, simple language to the point, and that was it. And he kept refining that over the next years till he died in 1556. But 56, 56. And so he kept on that refinement, and that becomes the basis of a 30-day retreat every Jesuit makes twice in his life. Once in novitiate, your first year as a novice, and before you take your final vows, or for your first vows, and then again after about 10, 15 years or so, before you take your final vows.
So you've done it twice?
Yeah, sure.
And have you directed any?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have directed a number of people in the spiritual exercises.
It's a great experience. I was in a seminary, did a 3-day, 8-day, and a 30-day. It'll change your life.
Yeah, it is.
It
really is. And Ignatius got into trouble because after he was a hermit, he realized that he wanted to share this with others. Spanish Inquisition was a little nervous in those. They're a little, I don't want to say trigger happy. It was more axe happy.
Oh, I didn't expect the Spanish Inquisition.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
And so they.
And Ignatius is saying, set the world on fire, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty bold.
And they were afraid that he was a Protestant. Now, they would investigate what he said, investigate his writing, and always find him innocent. But they said, you can't do this. You're not a priest. And so he started to study, went to grammar school, and was studying with the first graders to learn Latin. He knew he could write Spanish, but he couldn't write Latin. So he went to first grade, and he was already about 30 years old.
Wow.
Because he was born in 1491 and 92.
Talk about a humbling experience. There's a 30-year-old man, and I'm gonna go spend.
Well, there's a whole movie about this. It's called Billy Madison.
I never saw it.
Adam Sandler. Don't watch it.
Not a highly recommended one.
No.
Never mind.
Unless you have some time that you want to waste.
Well, what is Ignatius doing at recess with all these little first graders?
Now you're all in big, big trouble.
I think 16th century recess was a little bit different than today.
I bet so.
But he would still give retreats. And so eventually he realized Spain is not a good place for me. The Inquisition is just too hot on my case. So he went to Paris.
Oh, yes.
And studied at the University of Paris. And his
Went from first grade to a university.
well, he finished enough Latin to get over.
Oh,
there.
good.
They didn't have the same kind of
System.
process.
Sure.
But his roommates were a couple of guys that became his first
Awesome
disciples.
guys.
Yeah, one of whom was Francis Xavier.
Yes.
And he roomed with him. And Xavier was the big man on campus.
Oh.
He was the big man. He was an athlete, the running champ at University of Paris. He was on the running. They didn't have teams in those days.
They competed.
But they had races.
Yeah, there was lots of
and
competition.
he won the races and stuff
Yeah.
on a regular basis. And so they were roommates. And Xavier's family was also Basque. Ignatius was in Spain, but he was a Basque. Mm-hmm. And that's a different group than the Spanish. They were there before the barbarians who became the Spanish were there. A lot of German tribes entered into Spain during the barbarian invasions. The Vandals, they conquered Spain, and the Suevi. You don't hear. Matter of fact, I've been thinking about this. If you ever run into some trouble with your football teams, and they don't like you to be called by different Native American tribes, the barbarian tribes from Europe don't care.
They're up for option. The Washington football team, you can take that.
The Washington
Football
Barbarians.
team can take that.
Yeah.
The Vandals, whatever.
Well, the Washington Suebi.
There you go.
That's not Patrick Swaby.
No. It was probably named after them.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if that's his real name.
Swayze.
I don't know if it's his real name.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right. Stage
You
name.
can't tell in Hollywood what's real and what isn't.
Yeah.
And so, but if it is, that's probably from the Suebi. At any rate, they, have all this. They're a different group. Basques are a different group, but part of the Basque country is in France, and part of it is in Spain. Xavier's family fought on the French side, and Ignatius' family fought on the Spanish side. Now that's going to be a little tense.
Sure.
This is like having a U of Texas and a Texas A&M family in the same room.
Great analogy.
For years.
Great. We understand.
I know it.
Totally.
I know it.
You know what's also interesting about this point is that you have Christopher Columbus coming to the Americas, but the Jesuits, it was French that came to the Americas, right? The first Jesuits were from France, right?
In North America.
Maryland area?
No, not really. There were some Jesuits that went to Spanish Florida.
Oh, okay.
Who later on were martyred.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Now-
Mostly by the English.
Mostly by the English.
Yeah, but that's another story.
Now, the rest of the story.
Yeah.
And there were some who came to Virginia, and they were also martyred. But the French ones are the ones we know of as the North American martyrs. The Spanish martyrs are not as well known. But there were Jesuits in Florida, and of course there were a number of Jesuits that went to Latin America.
I just mentioned that because I hadn't heard the Spanish side of it. You could tell I was thinking only of the French, but the French gave America its first loan to start the country financially because we were in the pits. We were
We started off in debt. We're still there.
we got out
Haven't
of it.
recovered. Once.
Even more so.
Yeah.
Though one of the first Franciscans to go to Mexico after Cortez.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't right with Cortez. It was a little bit after him. That Franciscan was named Ignatius Loyola.
Oh.
It was St. Ignatius' nephew.
Whoa. Really?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. Did not know that.
How
I know the
cool.
Franciscans like to tell me that story. So
Round
I
two.
remind them, well, that's fine and dandy, but one of the first Jesuits was named Francis.
It works.
Come on, bring it on, Franciscans. Let's go. In fact, that's where I always will tease the friars at EWTN. I say, difference between a Franciscan and a Jesuit. Franciscan walks in the woods and he sees Bambi. I walk in the woods, I see backstrap steak and a new pair of boots.
This I understand.
We speak that language, yes.
Yes.
You know, I enjoy your conversation because I think a lot of times we think, oh, the ordained and the religious orders and all of this is too far outside of the layman's reach. But the influence on the home that we live in and, and your understanding of it, the influence of who we are as farmers and, ranchers and hunters and, it's really the root of how we got started. And these people were brave people. They put their life on the line. The Jesuits that came over, I mean, they were on a mission and they were martyred and they were scalped by, natives. And it was tough.
Yep. And here's one of the things that, we started off talking about creation.
Oh, yes.
And how this key notion goes back to these spiritual exercises that St. Ignatius learned in this struggle with his own conversion in the process of life. He said that in the first principle and foundation, that everything is created for the glory of God and everything is good. Now, he didn't make that up.
Sure.
Yeah. Sure.
This is something that comes from Genesis chapter 1, that as soon as the Blessed Trinity prepares creation, you know how it says in the first verses, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et ha'aretz v'ha'aretz hayata tohu v'vohu v'choshech al pnei hamayim v'ruach Elohim merchefet al pnei hamayim. Remember that? And
No, sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I say it all the time. Yeah.
Your kids speak Hebrew.
But it's how in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth was a wasteless void, and the Spirit of the Lord hovered over the waters. Now, by the way, there's one Catholic translation that's not quite right. I would even say kind of dumb, where it says a mighty wind hovered over. No. It says the Ruach Elohim, the Spirit of God, hovered over the water. And that word hover, merachefet, is a word used only one other time in, I believe it's Deuteronomy 32, where it refers to an eagle hovering over its nest, in order to induce its young to start learning to fly. They'll hover over, flapping their wings to encourage their young to start to fly. Before they pick them up and throw them out the nest.
It's like a drawing up.
Some of you.
Oh, yeah.
And then after that preparation, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And every time God creates something, he says it's good, except for the firmament. On the second day, he created the firmament to separate the waters above from the waters below. And he doesn't say it was bad, just didn't say it was good.
He didn't. Yeah.
Now,
It wasn't good yet because he hadn't finished.
No. You're missing the whole issue.
I missed it.
Yep. What's in Jewish countings? What's the first day of the week?
Saturday?
No, that's the seventh day.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
That's
Sunday.
the Shabbat. So first day is
Sunday.
and the creation of the firmament happens on the second day, which is
Monday.
this proves it's in the Bible. Even God doesn't like Mondays.
Amen. Let's just get rid of it.
Oh, man, you had me on the hook the
Somebody's
entire time.
Somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
Yeah, I don't know. You had me on the hook the whole time. I know. Oh, this is going to be great. That's a joke. You got me.
But it's
See,
a
this
real.
is why I don't only hunt, I fish.
Yep, he got me.
Real the deal. And so, but that God's creation is good. And then the issue for us human beings is that, do we use creation for the greater glory of God? This ought to be our goal, that it's all good. And St. Ignatius says that's true of a long life or a short life, of sickness or health, of riches or poverty. Any one of those is a good.
Yeah.
Didn't say comfortable. You didn't hear me say comfortable.
Nope. You didn't say comfortable.
But it is a good. And the Lord, the greater glory of God can show through any one of those gifts, whether it's a long life or a short life. That's why we have a number of saints who are very young.
Yeah.
Some of them died as martyrs. Some of them died of disease. This young man that's they're looking to have as the patron saint of the internet was just a young teenager. Was he 15, 16?
Carlo,
Yeah, Blessed
16,
Carlo.
I think so.
Yeah, Blessed Carlo. And it is good to have a young person as a patron of the internet, because the internet is so typically a trap for young people when they go searching in the wrong places.
Sure.
And sinful places. And this is something that we have to keep in mind about life in general. You have our Lord chose poverty, but there are a number of saints who were very wealthy, but they used their wealth and power for the greater glory of God.
They weren't attached to it.
And there are other people who are absolutely destitute, poor, and they use that poverty for the greater glory of God. And then there's farmers who keep getting poor.
Amen.
Ranchers are right there with them, like the one rancher who won the lottery and got a few $1 million. Said, "What you gonna do? You gonna go retire?" I said, "No, I'll just keep on ranching until it's all gone."
Won't take long.
It won't take long.
Yeah.
But it's this is part of life.
Yes.
Sure.
And
Except where
all
you're
that's
at,
good.
right? Be where you're at, and God
yeah,
can
exactly,
bless that.
exactly, exactly. And but also be alert. See, this is one of the things I always learned in hunting. You stay alert. What is it the Lord might ask you to do? Because there are different promptings of our Lord, and different situations show up. So Ignatius didn't want to stay in trouble with the Inquisition, so he moved to to France, to Paris, and there he got his first 10 disciples. 9 is what became the first 10 Jesuits.
In the way that God calls you, Father, and it seems as if your apostolate with Ignatius Productions, that's kind of front line. You talked about the Blessed Carlo with the internet, right? I mean, that's frontline stuff.
Yeah.
And in the media, that can be the front line, right? And to have these conversations.
Exactly. And I'm always happy to say I have zero training in media. I've never had a course in radio, television, and these verkachte computers. Who understands them? And so
Anybody can do it, is what you're getting at?
Well, I guess, I don't know, but it's for instance, I look at the folks at EWTN. Mother Angelica always would say to me and to audiences, I didn't know how to adjust the color on a TV, let alone run a TV network. But this is what happened, that the Lord used us who have no training in it to do what we do. And, and it didn't matter to her how many people we reached. She didn't care. People would always ask her, "Well, what are your ratings like?" She said, "I have no idea. I put this out there with Jesus."
Why does that matter?
Yeah.
You can reach just one person.
Yeah. And and there are plenty of folks were on their way to commit suicide, and their guardian angels got them to turn on the radio or TV, and they changed their mind. That's dealing with saving a soul right there. Or people on their way to commit abortion or something. These truly life and death issues, as well as the more normal kind of conversions that take place.
So as Chris pointed out, you're kind of in the front lines. You're out in the media. You're out up front. Do you find that you're hindered in any way from saying things that you want to say, or that hold you back?
Now and again, they sort of pull the reins up on me. Make sure I don't get too crazy.
Oh yeah.
They for instance, at the network, there are a lot of our viewers who don't really, think that hunting is a good idea.
Really?
Oh yeah. I always like to tell the story of this lady. I was giving a retreat up in Staten Island, New York. And this lady came up to me and said, "Father, how can you kill those poor deer?" And so I said, "Well, ma'am, do you go to the grocery store and buy meat?" She said, "Well, yeah." I said, "All right. Difference between you and me is that you get hired killers to do it for you. You're like a mafia don. I'm just a local hitman." And she said, "That makes sense."
She's gonna slap you or something.
They just talk like that.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I can say
Meet them where they are. Who knows who this lady was?
Exactly. Exactly.
as a
She was so sweet. She really was a delight. But she just said, "That makes sense."
well, I'll say that to that point, hanging out with you for a few days and being able to see your appreciation for the animals, it's I can attest to it firsthand. So it's awesome to see.
Yeah, and I just don't buy red meat in the store. I buy chicken. I'll buy that because if you say that you hunted that chicken, your neighbor might come hunting you.
Those are called varmints.
Yes, but other my red meat I buy and I butcher myself and
much healthier.
It's not only that. I love the whole process from choosing the animal, taking the shot, and doing all the cleaning and skinning, and then I butcher my own meat.
Yes.
That whole process, and then I cook it and eat it. And share it with friends and people who need meat.
Yeah.
I love doing that. I love
Absolutely. Yeah, you shared of a priest, maybe a diocesan priest who is a rancher and has cattle and provides that for the pantry there at the church, right?
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, he buys these heifers that won't nurse their calves. They kick them off. And sometimes even go after them. They're just mean heifers. I won't say what big city I think they might be from, but
Please. See, this is the controversy that Joe talks about. We're going to rein you in.
I know. See, that's what I mean. That's what that sort of hold me back. But anyway, he buys these mean heifers, cheap. Because they can't breed
guys
them.
are trying to get rid of them.
Yeah.
Because they're dangerous.
Exactly. And they're dangerous to the other heifers.
Yeah.
And so you get these bad girls together. He takes them out. They graze on this one ranch. It's a family that had been in law enforcement, and they don't raise any cattle themselves. They just want to be off on a ranch in Wyoming.
Yeah.
And they're just calming down after years of law enforcement because that is tough.
Tough, yeah.
Not only now, but it's been tough all along because you're dealing with mean, bad people.
Yes,
That's all there is to
It kind
it.
of changes your outlook on people. When
Yeah,
you have
yeah.
to deal with the worst of the worst every day.
Yep, and they were real serious law enforcement. They're having to deal with the worst.
Oh, yeah.
So at any rate, he puts them out there and they let them graze on their ranch because it's mostly empty land. And so I went out there to give a mission over at St. Matthew's Parish in Gillette, Wyoming.
Oh, yeah.
So a couple other ranchers that he and I both know, and put our horses up in there and rode out to this place where he's got the cattle, rode up above the rim rock and looked for the cattle and found them and drove them down and separated out a bunch of them to bring in to butcher. And the priest butchers them himself and puts that for the food pantry. And, since there's been a change of administration, the workers in the coal fields are getting out of work.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're people are hurting. A lot of people are hurting.
Yeah,
And and they need meat for their children. So
Absolutely.
this is a great way to do it. And some of the parishioners set up an old container, and they outfitted it with a butcher shop and a cooler.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So he's got that meat up in there, and it's just a great way to help out folks that just needs food.
Absolutely.
That's man, that's great. That's great. Talk about just trying to find your place and
provide a need.
God calls you.
Yeah, and it's grass fed. You have to go to some of these whole check market stores to find grass fed beef and pay extra.
Yeah.
when
For them to eat grass. Yeah, for them to eat grass. Yeah.
What's the deal?
But he gives them good grass fed beef and tasty, and that's good quality cattle. It's
They're just mean.
Yeah,
They're just
that's
mean.
it. Well, y'all, some of you have some red heads, right?
Oh, yeah. Almost all of them.
Well, he's got some red Angus, and they're just ornery.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Talking about cattle and
It's raining in there, Father. Hang on.
yeah. I'm gonna change
Don't go
the
there.
subject. Yeah.
Yeah,
See,
switch
here we go.
topics. Making our wife and kids.
Yeah. But
See, this is the problem of being on this podcast. Is
Yeah.
that the crowd's a little low. I'm starting to jump over it. They put me on high fence over at EWTN.
We let go of the reins here. Yeah.
you're kind of gazelle in your ways.
Oh man.
Or Mustang.
Yes,
For sure.
But I was talking to a guy who's local here, and he says he's got the purest bloodline from Christopher Columbus of the Texas Longhorn, and he so passionately went on to say that without the Texas Longhorn, North America would not exist in its population as it does today.
Yep.
Wow. And it's just very interesting. And you talked about, grass-fed. He said in his production with like a Red Angus or a Black Angus, they're not as efficient as these Texas Longhorns. That's why they drove them all the way up to Chicago and, Alaska.
Kansas City.
In Kansas City, yes. And Goodnight Loving Trail and all of these cattle drives. But I thought it was very interesting that it's just right down the road here where we have some of the purest breed of Texas Longhorns. And again, back to, the Spaniards bringing them over. And what he talked about specifically, and one of the only places that you can get it, this pure bloodline, is right here in a little town called Brownwood, Texas, down the road.
Yeah.
Yes, you pass through it.
Sure.
But they sell a hamburger there that's of their cattle, and it's an organization that they fight with the other organization of Texas Longhorns because they think they have the real Texas Longhorns, but what they said is to your point about buying chicken and hunting red meat, that this cattle is it's healthier than chicken. And it's cattle, it's red meat.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I'm excited they invited me out to go eat some Texas Longhorn. So
Well, speaking of which, I always like to talk about this for folks who have daughters, which you all do.
yes, 6 of them.
Yeah, 6 daughters.
Yeah, God bless you.
I always like to tell families that have daughters that, about how something I said to a lady I met up in Canada. I was at Niagara Falls speaking at a conference, and this lady and her boyfriend were in their late 30s, and I was at the elevator in between lectures, and she said, "Oh, can you marry us?" And he's looking like, "Oh." And I said, "No, ma'am, I have no jurisdiction. This is Canada. I'm an American, and I don't have any jurisdiction here of any kind in the church or outside." But then I said, "Ma'am, do you know how to domesticate wild cattle?" And she said, "No, why would I know that?" I said, "Well, let me tell you about it. What you do is you round them up, and then you drive them for 3 days. And in those 3 days, you don't let them go get a drink of water. You just keep driving them. And then at the end of 3 days, they are dragging. On the 4th day, you lead them to water. And at that point, they're yours." I said, "Ma'am, men are no different. And the man said to me on this level, why are you telling them our secrets? But see, people always ask, what do you learn out there? Well, I learn a lot of good stuff.
True nature.
Yep.
Understanding of
That's great.
yes, God's
You
creation.
never know where these conversations are going to go.
Never.
I love it.
Unpredictable.
Neither do I.
Yeah. For sure.